Okay, so the first supply that you'll need is a piece of plywood that is cut to size for your window. So my daughter's window was about 42.5 inches, and so I got a board cut to 44.5 inches. The board that I got this piece of plywood from only cost me $5 at the Home Depot, and they also cut it for free for me. And just to give you an idea of how thin it is, it's like maybe 1/4 inch thin, super lightweight so that it doesn't pull on your walls too much. And then I also got these 2x1s cut as well. This came in one long piece, and I asked them to cut the first piece to 2 inches shorter, or I'm sorry, the longest piece to 2 inches shorter than the actual board. That way, when I line up the edges, after it's screwed, there'll be space for all of it to fit on the same board, like so. Ta-da! That's very important. So basically, if this is 44.5 inches, then this needs to be 42.5 because this is 1 inch and that is 1 inch. And again, all those cuts were made for free. The next thing that I'll need is a jigsaw, and this is where a lot of people are going to turn the video off and say, I am not messing with that. I just can't explain how easy it is to use this thing. It's very safe. There's a guard all around the blade. This tool is cheap. You can go to the Home Depot and purchase it for like $12. This is the Black & Decker. I paid a little less because I got the plug-in, so make sure you get yourself an extension cord. The blades are just a couple of bucks. The person at the store can show you how to put it in, but it's extremely easy. I'll show you when I cut later. But it's almost like tracing. Once you cut your design, or once you trace your design on the board, you will be able to follow the lines just like you're tracing. And that's why I think this is like a really fun tool and very easy, and no one should be too afraid to try this. Of course, if you're just doing a square-shaped cornice board, then you will not need to worry about getting a saw. But if you're doing any sort of design, you'll need to get this jigsaw to cut it out. Alright, next you'll need some batting. The batting needs to be long enough to cover the board, plus 1 inch of overhang on all edges. It's really, really thin. This is just going to basically prevent the sharp edges of the plywood from rubbing against the fabric that you're applying. Also gives it like a slight plush appeal. You'll need your fabric that you're going to cover the board with, and again, the fabric needs to be the length of the board and the width of the board, plus at least, I'd say, 1 inch to 2 inches of overhang to wrap around it. And if you're going to do any sort of embellishments, you'll need those as well. I'll be needing this for my trim and my design, so I've got 5. You'll need a power stapler to attach your batting and your foam and your material. And of course you'll need plenty of staples. I'm going with the 5/16 because I don't need them to be very thick. But depending on how thick your project is, like whether the board is real thick or whether your material is real thick, you may need to adjust your staple sizes. Someone at the store will help you with that. All of this can be bought at Home Depot. It's very cheap to get this power stapler and these things. And of course they last forever. So when it comes to tools and hardware, this is also pretty simple. You'll need a drill, ideally. Power drill. You'll want the wood screws, no more than maybe 1 inch thick, because you have to remember that you're driving these through wood that's not very thick. You'll need 2 of these cup hooks. I got the 1.5 inch, so they'll stick out far enough from the design, and I'll show you that as I go along. But you'll need this if you're wanting to hang any sort of type of shears underneath of your board. And then I've got picture hangers. These things tap into the wood and allow you to hang it on the wall like a picture frame. If you have a double window, you'll need 3 of these. A single window, you'll need 2. I'll have some paper later on that's not shown now, but the tape is to keep the paper together as I make a template for my cut. A pencil to mark. This is a Phillips head screwdriver just to finish driving in any screws that may need help. I forgot to mention earlier that you'll also need a measuring tape as well as scissors. And as you can see, I've already laid out my paper. I taped it end to end along the edges as tight as I could. I first found the midpoint, and then from there I found the mid of the mid, which I labeled a quarter, and then I just kind of broke it down like from here to the end where was the midpoint, from here to the end where was the midpoint, and each time that I found these marks, I brought my measurements down just slightly. So I started the center with 3 inches, then I went down to 2.25 inches from the edge going up, then I went down to 1.5 inches from the edge going up at that mark, and then over here 0.75 at that mark, and every time I just broke it down by half. And that gives me a gradual climb up to the 3 inches and then back down to the board. And that allows me to kind of roughly draw out the curve that I want to cut. So I'm going to connect those dots free-handed, but you can use other tools as well if you're not trusting yourself to make a good clean line. And then once you do that, you're able to cut it out along the line and make your template for your board. So what I did here is I drew out half of my template, and rather than trying to replicate these exact dimensions on this other side, I'm instead going to fold this. So I'm going to remove it from the board where I taped it, make sure it's taped well and reinforced along the edges. If you have separate sheets of paper taped together. And now I'm going to fold this thing in half right at the midpoint, and I'm going to cut, and that's going to give me a symmetry on both sides. So now that this thing is folded in half, I am going to take a piece of tape and attach this to the board so that this doesn't move while I'm cutting along this line. I want to keep all of this 100% straight. So once I cut that template out along the line, I unfolded it and reattached it to the board, and then I took my pencil and I drew along the line. So now I will have a line for following when I go to cut the wood. So we've cut away all the extra batting, and one important thing to remember is to cut snips away for your picture hanger hardware. So this is what I bought. This is from the Home Depot. It came in a pack of 3 for just a couple bucks. I want to make sure that the amount that I snip away is going to fit the picture hanger, because it doesn't have a very thick nail, and you want to make sure you get it in there and you drive it all the way in, or else you could end up with this coming out and not hanging properly on the wall. I did that on both sides. Since this is a single window, it's not too wide, I only did 2 of the picture hangers as opposed to 3. Like a double window, definitely you'd want 3. So just make sure you do that. And the next step that I need to do is to attach the black fabric, and I'll come back in a moment. Okay, so here's what we got so far. This is after we've attached the black fabric, stapled it down, removed the excess. It's a bad angle. Let's see from here. Now we get to attach the adornments, which is the ribbon. But I want to make a special design with like X's And I want it to also look kind of quilty. So I am going to use a template of a triangle that I printed off the internet. Let's see if I can find it real quick. Here it is. So this, I just Googled 35-degree triangle and I found this. And I'm going to use this as a template of how to space my ribbon. So essentially the triangles will overlap like that and the ribbon will go like zigzag. So I just need to cut these out and then use them as my templates on the Cornice board. So I cut my 2 triangles out and taped them to one another on the front and the back to make sure they were very sturdy. And then I found my midline from the thin point to the top. I found the midline between that and then made the tape stretch across. And then I found my center line, which is under here. And that's the halfway point, and that's how I'm going to start doing my ribbon design. So my template is taped to the midline and the center line. That way I can make sure that it's going to look nice and even. And this is of course going to mimic the pattern of the ribbon, but I need to draw some staples in along this edge, not only to serve as a guide to where to put my ribbon, but also it's going to kind of tuft this a little bit and give it sort of a quilted look. So I'll demonstrate that in just a moment. Okay, so I basically took my stapler and there's a slight setback from the edge. So what I did was I lined up the edge to the template and made it match and then pressed down, and I just did that all the way along as I went down. And this is what I got. So basically, as you can see, it looks kind of like it has been tufted, or kind of, it created like a billowy appearance. And of course that looks awful right there, but once I fill it in with the ribbon, it's going to look excellent. And I will show you once that gets done. So what I'm going to do is replicate this X pattern probably 2 more times on this side and 2 more times on that side. Then I'm going to adorn the edge with ribbon. So it looks so much better in person. It's hard to get the details right with this camera. But once it's mounted, you'll see how it's going to tie in the shears with the black, and it's going to coordinate really nicely with the room. So that's next. I attached the picture frame hangers of the back of the Cornice board and the little indentions. And what I did was I just made sure that the edges of this lined up with the wood. And you basically just take like a little hammer and you drive this nail right into the wood, and it's pretty firm. Another thing that I'm doing, excuse the ugly back of this, is taking these little cup hooks and I'm driving them in manually to the wood, taking care not to drive it all the way through and poking out the other side where it would ruin the fabric. And this is going to hold my tension rod in place that's going to have the shears on it. So that way I don't have to worry about this not being far enough off of the wall to accommodate hardware for a, curtain rod. Because usually, curtain rods are going to come out further than this 1 inch, like the space that we have here. So once that looks like it's in tight, I'm going to go ahead and add the shears to the tension rod and then add it to the hooks. Okay, so the tension rod is mounted into the hooks. There's 1, 2, and 3. So here's my finished product. I have the shears attached with the tension rod and the hooks. I used a laser level to hang 2 nails, properly spaced apart, measuring the 2 picture hangers, and now I can just easily place this on there and it is ready to go. So I'm just gonna put it up here real quick. And just like that, it was ready. And all I have to do is just straighten my shears. Just however you see fit. So this project took me less than a day. It probably only took me about 4 hours because I had to keep taking breaks to do like dinner and things like that. So this is the second time I've done a project like that, so it's not like I have a ton of experience, so I believe that this is something that anyone can try and succeed doing. Thank you for watching.